Hi folks, here with a short video for the 2024 primary elections in Los Angeles. As you may know, California has a jungle primary system where all candidates run in the same primary regardless of party. If no one gets 50%, the top two advance to the general election. But if a candidate does get 50%, then they win outright, meaning that the primaries in California can be a bit more important than in other states because they might be your only chance to vote for certain offices. I've put this together as a transit voter guide, so I'm only evaluating the candidates on transit and I'm not including every office. You can check the description for a downloadable written version. Also, note that this won't exactly be the most visually interesting video I've ever made, due to me squeezing this in amongst a million other things because the election isn't waiting on my schedule. So, sorry about that. Now, there's a lot of offices to talk about, so let's get to it. The county supervisor positions are probably the most relevant to transit in LA County because they're automatically on the Metro Board and they're given a lot of deference for transit within their regions. Up this year are Districts 2, 4, and 5. In District 2, incumbent Holly Mitchell has been a reliable pro-transit vote on the Metro Board, and her main opponent, Daphne Bradford, is making stopping a simple steady of tearing down a freeway stub, the 90, a plank of her campaign, so it would seem electing Bradford would be very dangerous for transit, and would cement a vote against moving freeway dollars to transit projects in Metro M when that option becomes available in a few years. So you should very clearly vote for Holly Mitchell for District 2. In District 4, while Janice Hahn hasn't been my favorite member of the Metro Board, sometimes pushing options that are a little bit eyebrow-raising, she is pro-transit overall, and her opponents are not great. One is the mayor of Ranchos Palos Verdes, who thinks that the Hyperloop is a solution, and the other is Alex Villanueva, who should never be within shouting distance of public office, so it's an easy choice for Hahn here. In District 5, incumbent Catherine Barger is running against many candidates. She's by a mile the most conservative member of the Board of Supervisors, and the only one enthusiastic about highway projects. She's not been anti-transit, but she's championed prioritizing money for the last two foothill extension stations over anything else, which is, in my view, not remotely the best use of money. That said, it is the only active Metro Rail project in her district, so maybe that's understandable. However, she's also declared a hard conflict while voting on a BYD bus order, and that does not bode well for the Sepulveda line. Even worse, she was the chief of staff for her predecessor, Mike Antonovich, who held BYD stock when he was on the Metro Board, and received contributions from them without declaring the necessary conflict of interests. This all suggests that she has a relationship to BYD, the monorail contractor, that we do not want on the Metro Board. She has two notable opponents in State Assembly member Chris Holden and Mayor of Burbank Constantine Anthony. Holden seems to have more momentum, and what little he said about transit seems to mirror Barger's view on things, pushing those foothill extension stations and stating a preference for it to reach Ontario Airport. Transit is not one of the 16 issues Anthony addresses on his website, which I do find annoying, but that said, he's been very pro-transit on Twitter, is pro-heavy rail for the Sepulveda Pass, and wants bus lanes on Olive for the Noho Pasadena BRT in his district, which is an example of him taking the right position on transit in a contentious local fight, which honestly is pretty rare even among generally pro-transit officials. So to me, this is an easy choice for Constantine Anthony here. Let's move on to LA City Council, where the 7 even seats are all up this year. While not as important as county soups, LA City Council members often make up the mayoral appointees on the Metro Board, including termed-out District 2 Councilmember Paul Krikorian, and they can exert a lot of influence on the Metro Board and have a lot of power over, say, active transportation projects in their district. For example, former councilmember Koretz killed bike lanes on Melrose near where I live now, and I'm still deeply pissed about it. Anyway, let's get to it. CD2 is an open race since Krikorian is termed out. The frontrunner is his chief of staff, Adrian Nazarian. There is a long and gross tradition of city council spots being bequeathed to the incumbent's chief of staff every time someone gets termed out, which I don't love. And Krikorian is not my favorite, and voted for that Valley COG motion to ensure quote-unquote equity between the Valley and the West Side on the grade of the Sepulveda line, risking the more affordable Alt 4 getting slashed and pitting the monorail against the more expensive Alt 5, the only situation where I can see the monorail eking through. So I wouldn't risk voting his chief of staff to city council. That said, none of the frontrunners here are explicitly bad on transit, but I think Jillian Burgos has the best pro-transit plank, explicitly wanting to end car-first policy, and doesn't have that Krikorian baggage. So, Jillian Burgos for CD2. CD4 is an easy one. It's basically a two-way race between incumbent Nithya Raman and Ethan Weaver. Raman has been good on transit, and is explicitly pro-heavy rail for the Sepulveda line, Weaver is explicitly pro-monorail. Do not pass go, do not get elected to City Council. Vote Rahman for CD4. CD6 is Nuri Martinez's old seat, which she vacated for reasons, and is currently held by Imelda Padilla, who is seeking a full term. Padilla is fine, and she has no serious opponents, and her opponents seem worse than her, so vote Padilla, I guess. CD8 has incumbent Marquise Harris Dawson running, who is one of the better LA City Council members. He's good on transit and active transportation in his district, and easily the best on transit of those running, so he gets the nod from me. CD10 is currently occupied by Heather Hutt after the seat was vacated by Mark Ridley Thomas for reasons. She had been appointed to the City Council and is now running for a full term against a bunch of opponents. What little we've seen from her on transit has been bad, with her blocking bus lanes on La Brea in her district. In the CD10 mobility debate, I think Grace Yu came off the worst for transit, while Aura Vasquez came off the best, so Vasquez gets my recommendation on transit. CD12 is a two-way race between incumbent John Lee and Serena Oberstein. Lee is the former chief of staff of former council member Mitch Englander, who you may remember for reasons, and Lee, given his feature role in the indictment as city staffer B, may eventually get his number called up by the feds as well. That said, we're evaluating on transit here. Unsurprisingly, Lee also sucks on that, having supported the killing of the North San Fernando Valley BRT in his district. Meanwhile, Oberstein is good on transit and has the Streets for All endorsement, so this is another easy one. Vote for Oberstein, and be very sure to vote in the primary if you're in CD12, because since there's only two people running, it'll for sure get decided here. CD14 is currently held by Kevin De Leon, who has faced intense calls to resign for reasons, but it's totally okay. He sent out an apology in Comic Sans. De Leon, in addition to all the, racism stuff, has also kowtowed to Eagle Rock homeowners when it came to the NoHo Pasadena BRT line. So let's maybe get him out of there. Now, this race is unbelievably crowded, probably because everyone who's not Kevin De Leon realizes he will not be re-elected, so there's a pretty wide range of views on transit here. A few of the frontrunners surprisingly don't address transit at all on their sites, notably Miguel Santiago and Wendy Correa. Meanwhile, Isabel Jurado, who also seems to have a lot of traction, has a spectacular transit platform that I think is the most comprehensive I've seen of anyone yet. So it's Jurado for sure for CD14. There's an important transit-related measure on the ballot this spring too. Measure HLA is basically the quintessential pro-transit measure, which will force the city to enact its already adopted but mostly unimplemented mobility plan, adding a ton of bus and bike lanes and pedestrian safety improvements throughout the city, requiring them to implement the plan when repaving any street, something they should have been doing anyway, but without an enforcement mechanism in the mobility plan, they've been squirming out of it. This gets a huge yes from me. This is something we've desperately needed, and it's been a long time coming. It's crucial that this passes. State Proposition 1 isn't a transit measure, but is focused on mental health treatment and affordable housing, both of which will have downstream effects on transit, so I'll add it here with an obvious yes. Now, the US congressional and Senate races rarely have a huge impact on local transit issues. I won't weigh in on the Senate primary, for example, because I can't imagine it will matter who wins from a transit perspective, my other thoughts on the candidates notwithstanding. I do, however, want to call out CA32 Congressman Brad Sherman, who's been running for re-election. He's been casting aspersions on the heavy rail options for the Sepulveda line, unilaterally declaring Alt 4 the most cost-effective heavy rail option, a quote-unquote non-starter, because it makes some Sherman Oaks homeowners mad that they'd have to look at the train from time to time. He's persisted in touting the monorail's supposed ability to build to LAX in a single phase, despite the fact that Metro's already declared that proposal completely unfeasible for a variety of technical and logistical reasons. He's carried water for Bel Air and asked for tunnels to stay below 100 feet, a completely unnecessary and likely insanely costly request that will also likely prove to be technically unfeasible. When confronted with constituent backlash for all these positions, he's lashed out with a just asking questions defense and said he's not making any judgments before the EIR is released, despite doing things like going around and unilaterally declaring one of the options a non-starter before the EIR is released. And he's gone as far as to speak to Biden about the project and has said that he feels the funding of the project falls under his purview as it will request federal funds, and has suggested that he may write the USDOT about his views. In short, he is, in my view, one of the biggest threats to the Sepulveda line, and one of the only avenues by which the monorail may actually get chosen, over the protestations of basically everyone in LA that isn't a member of the Bel Air or Sherman Oaks Homeowners Associations. So all that said, if you're in CA32, please vote for his opponent, Chris Ahuja, who supports heavy rail for Sepulveda. Please, please, I beg you, please. For state senate and assembly races, I'll only chime in where I can draw some meaningful differentiation on transit, and a lot of the candidates of these races haven't taken any position on it, which is disappointing, as I in my last video pointed out that a lot of our issues with costs and timelines on transit projects can be solved by a state transit bill and CEQA reform. So in California Senate District 27, incumbent Henry Stern seems to be the best option on transit, mostly because opponents seem actively bad, so I would vote for Henry Stern. In Senate District 35, the only candidate in the clown car of people running that seems to address transit meaningfully is Lamar Lyons, so from the transit point of view, he'd get my nod, supporting connecting the ports of LA and Long Beach to the system. In Assembly District 41, both John Harabedian and Flunte Riddle seem pro-transit, with the former making a very general statement and the latter explicitly supporting extending the A-line to Ontario Airport and connecting the metro to Burbank Airport. In Assembly District 54, John Yee is the executive director of Los Angeles Walks, a pedestrian advocacy nonprofit, which I'd say is a pretty positive sign, so I'd vote for him. In Assembly District 55, incumbent Isaac Bryan has been good and is the obvious choice. And in Assembly District 64, incumbent Blanca Pacheco is a good choice. Yeah, that's all I've got on the state races. I know. I'm not going to be going over the various city council and mayoral offices of all the other municipalities in LA County because, well, there's honestly just too many for me to research. I want to stress that this is just my personal opinion on these races, and specifically through a transit lens. Thanks for watching, and probably in March sometime I'll be back with a new video. Either my current thoughts on how LA should approach long-term transit planning, or the LA area airports, but I'm leaning towards doing the airports first. See you then.